You know, lately we've seen a lot of people trying to pass a lot of anti-gun laws, universal background checks, red flag laws, etc. And they always say that this is done to stop the scourge of gun violence in this country, that these things have to be done to stop gun violence. And when you point out to them that none of these things will actually do anything to stop gun violence, their biggest response is always, well, what are you proposing? At least we're doing something, and it's better to do something than do nothing. And I've pointed out many times in the past that no, it's often better to do nothing than to do something stupid. But they also say, like I said, you don't propose anything, so it's got to be our proposals. Well, we propose things all the time to stop gun violence. The problems with the things we propose is that they actually stop gun violence, but they don't consolidate power with the elite, and they don't put more money in the pockets of the elite. So most people won't even consider our proposals because our proposals aren't easy. They aren't profitable. They're things that need to be done to actually stop gun violence. So today I thought I'd take a little time, simply because they like to portray that we don't have answers to the problems, we don't have solutions up our sleeves. I would like to take time today to put forth what I consider to be the top 5 things we can do in this country to actually stop gun violence. A quick disclaimer here before we get started. I'm going to be using the term gun violence in this video quite a bit. Now, I know a lot of us on the right of the gun issue, and I mean right in a couple of different ways there, don't like the term gun violence. We think it's misleading. It portrays guns as a factor in violence. It also portrays that somehow gun violence is worse than other violence. I personally don't think it's any different if you kill someone with a frying pan, a hammer, or a firearm. But some people like to pretend that guns are part of the actual problem. So we're just going to deal with the numbers of deaths that occur from guns, and we're going to use the term gun violence. I feel those of us on the right of the issue are big enough people to understand what that issue is, and to understand that term is actually kind of meaningless, but we're going to use it to appease the people on the left and kind of play their game a little bit in this video. So just keep that in mind, that when I use the term gun violence, I'm only using it to prove a point. Well, before we fade to black here, I want to add one more thing to this disclaimer. When I say end gun violence in this video, I'm not meaning an end to all gun violence, like no one will ever be harmed with a gun again. As long as people have free will and freedom of action, some people, a tiny little portion of the population, will do bad things regardless of what you do. That's just part of being a free country. The risks are worth the reward. So when I say end gun violence, I just mean take out as much as we possibly can without actually removing freedom from the people. Now, before I get into the actual list, I want to talk in generalized terms here. I want to say off the bat that if we spent half as much time and energy, especially the people on the left spent half as much time and energy actually dealing with issues as they do talking about gun violence, we would have a much better place to live. This would be a much better country. If they spent as much time worrying about making sure people have opportunity, both social and economic opportunity in this country, we wouldn't see as many people committing as many crimes. If people had the opportunity to get a good education or get job training, if they just were willing to get off their butt and do the work, if those opportunities existed at a higher degree than they exist now, and we weren't so intent on maintaining the divide between those in power and those not in power, we would go a long way to actually stopping the violence issues in this country, carte blanche, not just gun violence. But like I said, that doesn't serve the needs of the elite, so that's not a popular opinion. But with that general statement being said, let's get into my list, like I said, of the top 5 things we can do in this country to stop gun violence. One big factor in gun violence in this country is domestic violence. Violence between one spouse and another or other members of their family. Now, one way I think we could combat this is just to provide better sex ed training in high schools and marriage counseling, both before and after people are married. A lot of people get trapped in bad marriages young because they rush into marriage. They don't understand all the repercussions of actually being married or having children. If people were educated better at a younger age about how they should not rush into certain things and how they should make better decisions when they're younger. I'm not talking, don't do drugs, they're bad, don't have sex, they're bad, that kind of education. I'm talking about education that says, hey, if you decide to have a baby young, these are the financial problems you're going to face. These are the logistics problems you're going to face if you ever try to get an education or a job. If you're in a relationship, let's talk about what it means to be in a relationship and how you have to be secure in yourself before you can actually form a secure relationship. If we had those type of educational programs for younger people and even older people, we would see less problems with marriages in this country. We would see less domestic violence. So that's one big thing we could do right now to stop a big section of the gun violence in this country. Now, another issue that is a big factor in gun violence in this country is mental health. And the way we solve that is to start having a better mental health system. As far as industrialized nations go, we have pretty much the worst mental health system in the world. And not only do we have the worst system, but we demonize mental health issues. You know, we don't demonize people for having heart conditions or even alcoholism, things like that. But we demonize people that have mental health issues in this country. That needs to stop. Because of that, people who need help and who could benefit from help don't seek it because they don't want that stigma of mental health problems hanging over their head. So not only do we need to get rid of the stigma, we have to start putting a system in place that can deal with the issues that is accessible to anyone that has problems. Once again, that doesn't consolidate power and it doesn't make anyone a lot of money. Now, it actually provides a lot of jobs because if we had a bigger healthcare system, we'd have more healthcare jobs. So that actually does provide money for people like you and me, but it doesn't put money in the pockets of the 1%. Not if it's accessible to everybody. So that's why it's not popular. But if we started doing that, if we started having a good mental health system in this country, putting more money towards that, then we do other things. If we put as much money towards the mental health care system as these billionaires put towards anti-gun laws, we could make a big dent in the problem. And if we removed the stigma associated with mental health in this country, a lot more people would seek the help that they need when they first need it, and they would not get to the point of where they do bad things. Most people can be helped if they receive the help they need. That's what we need to start doing. We need to start making sure we recognize the signs. We have a system in place to help the people, not commit them or demonize them or create a stigma on them, just actually help them. And we need to make sure that system is available to everyone. That would go a long way in this country to solving our violence issues and especially our gun violence issues. Now, at number 3 is a simple one that seems like it'd be common sense. Make our prison systems once more about containing actual criminals and rehabilitating those that can be rehabilitated. Now we have a system that is geared mostly around profiting off of low-level offenders, usually low-level drug offenders, because of the war on drugs. If our prison systems once again became about containing people that are a danger to society and rehabilitating people that did something wrong, we would see less repeat offenders. Now all we do, like I said, is throw these people in a place and allow a big corporation to make a lot of money off of housing them. Very little rehabilitation. It's much cheaper to just give them cable TV and some weights than it is to actually rehabilitate them. So we need to revamp our prison systems. If someone isn't safe to be in society, if they're not safe enough to buy a gun or vote, then they shouldn't be out of prison. Especially not when there's 20 beds being filled with some guy who just had a joint in his pocket. If a person who is a violent offender is allowed to walk free while those people are kept in prison, then you can see that there's something definitely wrong with our system. So like I said, if we once again made our prison system about separating the dangerous people from society and rehabilitating the people that just made a mistake, we would go a long way in this country towards stopping the problems we have with repeat offenders and gun violence in this country. Now at number 2, we're going to deal with pretty much the second largest issue when it comes to gun violence in this country. Now, one thing the people on the left don't like to tell you when they talk about how many violent acts are committed by firearms every year and how many children die, they don't like to tell you that the number one driving force in those two factors are gangs. Most of these are gang related. especially the children's death, the young death, and the one-on-one violent gun crimes. They're gang related. And you might say, well, how do we do anything about gangs? Gangs are a problem that's hard to solve. That's not true. Gangs stem from two things. To a much lesser degree, they stem from young people wanting a place to be included, where they want to feel like they belong. And two, to a much bigger degree, it's about money. And where does that money come from? It comes from drugs and prostitution. So if we in this country did a few things, if we started putting as much money towards making young people have opportunities as we do towards the war on drugs, by presenting them with more opportunities for after-school programs, for educational projects, maybe for internships, etc., then they wouldn't feel the emotional need to join gangs. And they wouldn't be pressured as much financially to join gangs if they had other opportunities. And the main way we could wipe out gangs is legalize drugs and legalize prostitution. I am pro any adult being able to put whatever substance in their body they want, recreationally or medically. So I am not for the war on drugs. I think it's the biggest waste of money, and it is the biggest scam ever pulled on the American people. It needs to be done away with. It is the source of most of our country's ills right now. And also this whole Puritan thing against people being able to do what they want to do with their own body if they're an adult. We're not talking human trafficking or child stuff here. We're talking just grown adults being able to do what they want to do with their own body. And if that is be a legal prostitute or a sex therapist, whatever they want to call themselves, I'm okay with that. It doesn't hurt anybody. It doesn't really hurt anyone at all. So all it does is hurt the morals of some high and mighty people. And like I say, the people in power, the elites, they use these things, these moral beliefs to turn people against each other. People that are morally against drugs or people that are morally against prostitution, they manipulate them with these issues. So that helps them stay in power. That's why they don't want to do anything about this. But if we just got rid of the drug war, if we got rid of this ridiculous Puritan belief against prostitution, and if we just provided young people a place to go after school, we could go a long way towards dealing with gangs in this country and solving a lot of the problems we have as far as gun violence is concerned in this nation. And finally now, we will deal with the number one cause of gun deaths in this country. One thing a lot of people who talk about gun deaths don't like to tell you is that the majority of those gun deaths are from people taking their own lives, suicides. Now you might ask yourself, well, what can we do to combat suicide? That's a thing that one person does to themselves, and how do we stop that? Well, one way we can stop that is to start listening, to start being open and understand when people are hurting. This doesn't even require a lot of government interference. This can be done a lot by families. And if families stopped believing the myths about suicide, like people that do suicide, they plan it for a long time and there's nothing you can do to stop them, or that people who talk about it won't actually do it. Those are the two biggest myths about suicide. One thing about suicide is it's often impulsive. Someone gets to the end of the rope, they feel they have no other options, they take their own life. They actually feel people will be better off without them, or they feel like they'll be teaching these people a lesson or whatever, but it's a spur of the moment decision. That's one thing a lot of people don't understand. And another thing is, most people who commit suicide tell people beforehand. It's the exact opposite of what people think. They let you know. When people are struggling, when they're hurting, they like to reach out. We're pack animals. We reach out to each other. And when they reach out to their family and their friends and they're ignored because they believe, they're talking about it, they won't do it. Or if they're going to do it, there's nothing I can do about it. That's what hurts so many people. And nowadays we have problems with veterans coming back who aren't getting provided adequate mental health care from the military without being labeled as crazy. You know, if you seek help for PTSD after you come back, you run the risk of being labeled as crazy and losing a lot of your rights. That needs to be gotten rid of. And like I said, families need to start being more involved in understanding the signs. We need to have more suicide prevention training in this country, maybe even in high school, to let kids know, here's what to look for in your family and friends. If they start doing these things, if they start saying these things, get involved. You would be surprised how much that would make a difference. A lot of people know that I used to be a mental health professional before I became a retired loser. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat across from someone and said, not trying to figure them out or trying to solve the problems they have or trying to work out all their issues or somehow fix them so that they don't kill themselves, but just saying to them, make me a promise that no matter what happens these coming days, if you decide that the best thing you can do is kill yourself, you won't do it until you see me again, until our next appointment, or you call me when you're thinking about doing it. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking you not to do it. I'm not trying to solve any of your problems. I'm just asking you to give me your word as a gentleman or a lady or whatever, and it's usually men, unfortunately, that you won't do it without talking to me first. That gets rid of the majority of suicides right there, because most of the people, when they get to that last moment, when they're like, I can't take it anymore, they'll be like, but I'm going to go out true to my word. I'm going to talk to him. It was very successful. So if that was their family, their mother, their father, their brother, their best friend that did that, said, listen, before you make any decisions like this, you talk to me. Or if you just want to talk, you talk to me. And if we had, like I said earlier, a better mental health system that didn't attach a stigma to people and strip them of their rights when they seek help, we'd be able to refer them to places that could give them actually better help. Maybe that could help them solve some of their problems. You could say, hey, I know what you're going through. Here's a support group that meets regularly that deals with the same things you're dealing with. Here's a number for a local clinic that provides counseling for the same issues you're going through. All it takes is an ear. And all it takes is a little ray of light at the end of the tunnel. That, hey, there's a therapist I can see, might be that light at the end of the tunnel. Hey, my best buddy's there for me. That might be the light at the end of the tunnel. And a lot of times that light at the end of the tunnel is all it takes to stop someone from taking their own lives. Make people know no one will be better off without you. Emphasize the struggles of the people who survive. But focus on survivors. I've seen a lot of stuff on the media and on TV that talk about how, oh, this person was such a damaged soul. And they kind of center on the person that kills themselves instead of centering on the people that survive. One of the reasons a lot of people kill themselves is they think everyone will be better off without them. But when you show them that that's not the case, a lot of times that reasoning goes out the window. So like I said, I could go on about this for hours, but just listening. Just providing them an outlet, providing them another option other than self-harm could go a long way to solving gun violence as it relates to suicides in this country. And if we took care of that, along with the other 4 things I mentioned in this video, we would go a long way to eradicating the vast majority of violence, period, in this country, much less gun violence. So even though these ideas aren't profitable to the elite and they don't consolidate power with the elite, we the people need to start realizing that these are the things we need to do. So when someone tells us we don't have any solutions either, yes we do. We have solutions. Solutions that will actually work. Not solutions that the best thing you can do about them or best thing you can say about them is it's better to do something than nothing, because we all know that's stupid. So let's start doing the things that actually matter, and then we can actually solve the problem of gun violence in this country.
Oops.
Go ahead. It's a lady at 46 South Road. 46 South Road.
Greenfield. Station 1 call, retone that police. 10-4. Captain 4 to go to that location. This is 1-9, is that correct?